Hey guys, in today's video I'm going to show you how to set up this basic level for Pong. By the end of this video you'll have two walls, a wall here and a wall here, along with a ball, and when we hit play we'll be able to generate our ball to move and collide with the ball and have it all set up to go. Alright guys, I'll see y'all in there. Okay, so in our template selection, we're going to have a blank template, and we're going to be using Blueprint, Desktop Console, no starter content. And we're going to call this, I'm going to call mine Pong tutorial. And so if you load in, now we have our little play area where we're going to be at. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new game mode. And it's going to be our Pong game mode. And basically what the game mode is, it pretty much, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. It controls the game. So anything that you want to, change, or if you want to talk to a server, if you have a multiplayer game, it's all going to go through the game mode itself. And it talks to the player pawns, it talks to AI pawns, the HUD and everything, and tells you what to display and everything. So we'll say select game mode. We'll find our Pong game mode. And then now that is selected, if you hit play, you can still move around and do what we want inside the editor, which is perfectly fine. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go into our content browser and we'll create a new blueprint class of type pawn. And we'll call this BP underscore player. Open that up. And then we're going to add a cube. And then underneath this, also, we're going to add a camera. And we're going to leave it detached from the cube. So this default scene root, it is the parent to both of these objects. The reason being is that way we can move our camera up. And then we'll rotate it 90 degrees. So now, let me go ahead and dock this. We'll go back to our content, open up our Pong game mode, and inside our default Pong class, instead of default pawn, we're going to use our BP player. Click compile. Now if you hit play, we are looking down at our pawn. So what we'll do is we'll go back to our player. Let me exit out of this. Go back to our BP pawn, and we're just going to resize him. And I think in the Y, we'll do maybe 0.5 and 0.5. And then the X, oh, I am resizing the camera. That is completely wrong. Let me change that back. Go back to cube, and then we'll do 0.5 and 0.5. Make them a little bit smaller. And maybe 1.5 for the length. Now hit play. We got a nice little paddle there. So we hit play now. It's not movable. We can't do anything with it at the moment, but it is there. And okay, so from here, what we need to do is we need to get our player. We need to get our player from the center of the screen over to the left. And the easiest way to do that is to go back to our player, or go back to our cube, and we'll move him in the Y direction. Let's say, I think 500, negative 500. Click compile, hit play. It's a little too far, but that's fine. We can always adjust that. So go back to our BP player. We have a stop. And let's go negative 400. Click play. That's a little bit better. Okay. Sorry about that. So what the problem was let me drag this back in here. And you probably figured it out in the time that it took me to do this. So whenever I drug this in here and it was like this, whenever I was doing this, what was happening was when we hit play was it was overlapping this in a weird way that it wasn't allowing me to drag this player down any further because of this player. So what I ended up having to do was just pretty much delete this guy. And then now if I hit play and hit F8, we eject and we go through, we start looking at it, we have definitely got him down a little bit further, which I think is about as far down as we're going to get him. So that's fine. That's no big deal. All right, that's definitely doable. We can play with that. So now what we'll do is we'll create the movement so we can get him moving. So we'll go back into our player pawn, and then inside the event graph, underneath tick, we need to get our reference to our cube, and we'll say set local or add local. I don't know why I said set, add local offset, and we will split this delta. And then we're going to get mouse Y. Then we'll plug this right directly into our delta X. Reason being is that our X moves forwards and backwards this way. And our Y goes this way because Unreal uses a left-handed coordinate system. So whenever we want to move, forwards and backwards, we have to go on the X. So hit play. And now if we move, you can definitely tell he's moving. He's awfully slow, so we'll have to adjust that. And the camera seems to be off a little bit more too. So let's go back into here. And the first thing we're going to fix our camera. It just does not seem to be getting everything that we want. So we'll raise it up just a hair bit more. Probably let's just do 650. See what that looks like. A little bit better. And we're gonna move it. In the x-axis. Let's do 25. See what that looks like. And maybe a little bit more. So let's just do 100. We're gonna be a little bit too much, but yeah, it is a little bit too much. So we'll go back to here. We'll go in the middle, 75. That's better. Okay. So going back to our player pawn again, instead of our event graph, what we're gonna do is we're gonna have to multiply this float by a float. And we're gonna go ahead and we'll set this to a variable, promote to variable, and we're gonna call this player speed. And then we'll set this as, let's start off with 15. We're going to make this instance editable. We're going to make this instance editable. And then what that means is when we go back to here and inside of our world settings, you'll see in a second, hit play. And we moving at a decent rate, but the only problem was I did not connect that. There we go. hit play, and it moves fairly quick, maybe a little bit faster than what we want. But what we can do is we can go to F8, we can find our player, and we can automatically change the speed right here. So if we want to slow it down a little bit, go back in, hit F8 again, possess him, and move him forward and backwards. I think that's fairly decent. I may speed it up just a little bit more. So let's go ahead and let's just do 10. Okay. So now we have our player. We can play, we can move, but we have nothing to move to. So let's go ahead and create a ball. So go back to content browser. We'll do another blueprint class of type Pong. And this will be BP underscore ball. Pretty much the same thing like we did last time. We're going to add in, this time it's just going to be a circle, a sphere, like compile. And then we'll add the ball into our scene. And it's awfully big. We may have to size it down. Yeah, we'll size it down just a little bit, but there's the ball. Halfway there. So go back to our BP ball. And we'll just knock it down 0.5 on all of them. Now hit play. That's fairly decent. So inside of our ball again, we're gonna make sure we have our sphere selected. Select simulate physics, click compile. And then we'll go to our event graph and we'll drag off from here and we'll say add impulse for the sphere. And what we're going to do is we'll say -500. Click compile. Now if I hit play, it'll move in this direction. It's going to move exactly toward this. So if our player was starting down here and we hit play, see how and you can still hit it, but you see how it's a little bit off. It's not moving directly at the player, so it kind of randomizes it. So another thing we could also do is we go back into our ball and we could do this. We could do a promote to variable. And we'll say inside here, we'll say ball directions, just because we're on more than one. And then we'll split this struct. Then we'll split this one. And basically, we just gotta make sure we keep this in the negative. So we can do a clamp. Or actually, instead of clamp, we'll do a random float in range. And the min's going to be whatever this is, and the max will be, let's set the max to, just so we know it's working. We'll set it to 100. And then, which we'll set these in a second. And then we'll say from here, we'll do another random float. And we'll set this, I'm sorry, I set down the wrong one. No, I didn't. We had it right. What am I thinking? And then from here, we'll do a -5 to -500 to a -100 in range of that. And then the Z, we'll just leave it as 0 because we're not going to change that at all. So if you click back on our variable, we have 0, 100. And then we have, which we'll change this. We'll do negative 100 to 100, negative 500 to negative 100, and 0 to 0. So click compile. Now it should give us, yeah, it's going to give us a random area that'll move in, and we'll fix that too. But it'll kind of randomize it, so every time the player hits play, it's not going to go in the same direction each time. Just to kind of give it, so let's speed it up just a little bit more. We want a little bit more oomph. So what we'll do is we'll multiply this float by float. Let's do by 10. See what that looks like at first, because this could be terribly wrong. Oh yeah, yeah, it was good though. I did like that. So the only problem is now, well, for one, it fell off the board. But the only problem is now we need some walls, because it is randomizing. It is, you know, going in a different direction, but it's falling off the board. So let's go ahead and create some walls. So we'll go back to our content browser, and we'll do actually we could probably do it from the player itself. We'll do a Control W, and it's to BP player 1. This will be BP player wall 1. And then inside here, we'll open this up. We're not going to need this or this. So compile. And actually, we're not even going to need the camera. We can delete the camera. And we'll go back to here. And we'll set this back to 0. Set that back to 0. It probably would have been faster just to create a whole new one. But either or. Click compile. Now we have our wall, our north wall made. So what we can do is we'll drag in our wall, our BP wall 1, and we'll say wall 1's this one up here up top. So we'll pull it up. We will drag it over here, and then we'll scale it. Scale it out this way. Move it over just a little bit. Scale it a hair bit more. More. Okay. We have that wall, and then what we can do now is we'll just recreate this wall again. So we can pretty much copy this. Now we don't need to copy it. What we need to do now is we need to go back to our content browser, and we're just going to duplicate this wall 2. Pretty much all the same. We'll drag in our wall 2 in here and do the same thing over again. Put it back to here. Get it as much as in the center as we can. Then we'll scale it in the Y. Just like that. Now we have our walls. So if we hit play now, the ball doesn't go through it. Our player does, but the ball won't. So the next issue that we have, and you could kind of see it, you kind of saw it right there, was the ball's moving up and down. Let's see if I can get to do it again. Yeah, right there. So what we need to do is we need to lock our ball. So go back to our ball, go to our sphere, and what we're going to do is we're going to, in the physics area, we're going to do some constraints, because we're only wanting to move in the X and Y position. We don't want it to move in the Z. So we'll just lock it there, and we'll lock the rotation there also. Now if we hit play, it's moving fairly decent. The only other thing that I'm noticing is we're having problems with the ball bouncing. So we'll fix that here in a second. So back in here, what we'll do is, instead of creating a material, we're going to go down to materials and textures. I'm sorry, go down to physics. And inside physics, we're going to create a physical material. And then we're going to call this Bouncy. Let's do bouncy underscore mat. Open it up. And pretty much what we're going to do, we're going to set the friction down to 0. And restitution. Restitution is the bounciness of it, set from 0 to 1. So we're going to set this to 1. Click save. And that's basically all we got to do over this, or on that. And then if we go back to our ball, inside of our ball, go to viewport, click on the sphere. For our physics material override, we're going to use our bouncy material. So what I just did was, and now I'll show you the way to do this. We'll set this as clear. Is you can go to your content browser, make sure you have it highlighted, get a BP ball, and just click this little arrow next to it and click save. So now if we go back and we hit play, it's not as friction. Like, it doesn't have as much friction, but the problem is our walls and our pedal has friction still. So what we'll do is we'll go back to our BP player. We'll just do the same thing over again. Scroll down to where you see the physics. We'll add our bouncy material, and then on the wall itself, physics, add material, wall 2. Oh, did I pass it? Oh, it's because I don't have the cube selected. Physics, wall material. Hit compile. Now if we hit play, it's moving at speed. So I don't know if you figured it out yet or not, but I did find a little bit of a problem. There's 2 ways to solve it. So in the beginning, we had our ball, or I had my ball, sitting right directly on the floor, which is fine. You can leave it on the floor if you want. That's all up to you. If you leave it on the floor though, what was slowing it down was it was still getting friction from the floor. So you could always go into your floor, where your floor is at, and then scroll down and add in our bouncy material, which would somewhat solve the problem. Or what you could do also is just come into where your ball's at and raise it up off the floor just a little bit. It doesn't have to be a much, just a little bit. And the reason why this will work is because we have our ball locked in the Z axis, meaning that it's not going to move up and down. So where we set it here, relative to the floor, is where it's going to stay. So now if we hit play, it's moving fairly decently. You can interact with it, and it's not going to slow down at all. So it got kind of stuck there. So you come into it, you hit it. Man, I'm terrible at Pong. I can't even hit the ball. Yeah. So it definitely works better if we just go ahead and play it like that. Okay. All right, guys. So in the next video, when we come back, we'll be fixing our problem with the player, because he's still able to go through the walls. And then also on top of that, we'll add in our AI, and we'll add in, we'll do the AI, and we'll probably add in maybe a menu screen, and we'll package and ship this game. All right. Be sure you hit the like and subscribe button. That way you stay up with all of our new content. And if you want to, leave a comment down below. Let me know how you like the video, if you don't like it, or if you want to see something new. All right, guys. I appreciate it. I'll see y'all next time.